Hello, hello. Thank you for joining us. Yes, you're not watching a cartoon show. This is just how I go with this hat. Don't go anywhere. Also, this isn't Shrek. If you think it is, we're going to talk about it later. And well, anyway. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name is Iran. I am happy to be with you here all today to talk about some stuff around JavaScript. We're going to have a Snyk Ambassador, some community members. Some people will join us, and we're going to have some fun talking about freestyle JavaScript stuff. Anything about like tooling ecosystem. Are we in a stage of JavaScript fatigue, or did we like brush that thing out in the last couple of years? I don't know. We'll say maybe we'll chat about some supply chain security attacks. So that might be a thing. But to do all of that, I actually need to invite some really, really good friends. So first off, I'm going to call in for the person who does the actual live stream. He's like the person behind the camera. He masterminds everything about the live stream. My amazing colleague and friend, Brian Clark. Come in.
I was not expecting an intro like that, but wow. Yeah, I guess that's me.
Is it? Wait, let me look. Okay, yeah, that's you.
Should I leave now?
No, it's the goofy face. Now I recognize it. That's it.
How's it going, Laurent?
Going well, going well. I'm excited for the next person who's going to join us as well.
Yes, me too. Who is it?
Trying to come up with a funny thing, but I'm just going to go with an introduction. I was making maybe a comeback to that one, but it's like, no. I'll just do the introduction because she well deserves all of it. So welcome the next person who is... I can't even start because like she's an amazing security practitioner. She's doing everything from like security awareness and reach. She's advocating for security, but not only that, she's like talking and involved with like women in cyber and women in tech. She's like really all out there trying to make the world better and enabling more inclusive communities and people to take part. She's a GitHub star. She's a Snyk Ambassador. She's an Open UK Ambassador. I'm going to stop here and let her introduce herself, but meet on the amazing, the wonderful, the superwoman, really, of Sonia Weist. Here we go. Here we have you.
Oh my God, what an intro. I'm blushing. Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
We should be thankful. Thank you for joining us. What's up?
Good. Yeah, good. Trying to survive with the weather in London, but yeah. So.
Yeah, is it cold or warm? What's going on there? I've heard different things.
It's really London-ish, we'll say. So the usual sunny, rainy. Yeah.
Undecided.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
The weather is sunny and beautiful here in Florida. I'll just let you all know that. And but it's very humid, so it's kind of disgusting going outside. You just start sweating immediately.
It's the same here in Israel. Yes, I live very close to the sea, which means, same humidity issues here as well.
Nice. Yep. Cool. So where do we begin, Laurent?
It's a good question. I don't know. Let's talk about some JavaScript stuff, basic stuff. So, Brian, I know you've been doing some JavaScript stuff. We talked about it previous time, like some Angular coming up from .NET experience. I've done that from PHP and some C++ stuff.
Wait, hold on. Sonia, I was here to talk about Java.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about Java. It starts at it's in 2 hours. I'll send you the link. You go there and you talk about Java. You might be alone, but
why would I be alone? What are you trying to say?
Who's talking about Java? It's like, okay, well, we'll stop the trolling. We love Java people, but we also have a lot of fun just trolling each other. So there's that.
We do, yes, for sure.
So, oh, by the way, did I tell you JavaScript is essentially, it's like Java. It's like object oriented and everything. It's just a script type of things. Like you could still run that with the Java. Yeah, I don't know.
Really? Oh, that's news to me. What about you, Sonia? Did you know that?
Yeah, well, I assume so.
Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? Yeah, so I don't know, where do we begin? Sonia, what's your kind of like background to JavaScript? Do you want to share a bit?
Maybe we should start with the best content for learning JavaScript for all the people joining the chat. Like if they're wondering where they should start. I don't know if you guys have some starting point where you would redirect people to start learning JavaScript.
Yeah, I'm happy to share one with. I actually have an interesting story about this from like the local community here, and maybe that helps other people as well. So there's obviously like so being in Israel, the local language is not English; it's Hebrew, and so a lot of resources, of course, are on the net or English, and kind of what's been happening in the last few years is that one of the leading Israeli web/JavaScript bloggers, his name is Barzik. He's a very well-known figure here. It's like because of that blog, because of like how much he has been helping the community, he kind of like said, "Hey, I'm gonna basically write in Hebrew a bunch of books on like web development. It's like everything from Git to MySQL and JavaScript. Even though I think there's like a jQuery book even. There's like a Node one and everything. And like the idea is like trying to make it accessible and like people like kids at the age of 10 or 12 can just pick it up and start doing web dev. And it's been a massive hit for people here in Israel who's like, I'm pretty sure it's like run out of like the hard copies and it's like all digital at this point. He needs to like print more hard copies. But yeah, like that's like a really wonderful story from like my local community that I really like sharing.
Nice, that's cool. Sonia, did you have one in mind?
Yeah, Free Code Camp, which is an online learning platform. It's a good one because it kind of like breaks down step by step how to learn JavaScript. It's not only JavaScript; they also have HTML, CSS, and other things. But the interesting bit is that at the end of the course, you have a project to build, which is important because when you're learning a language, it's interesting to be hands-on and start creating project as soon as you learn the language. So yeah, that would be actually a good one to start with. And also side tips would be that when you start building those projects, also start pushing it on your GitHub profile. So start having those project posted there, and you can also start like creating good documentation with your README file. You can also use the boards to do like some sort of project management. So if you're, I don't know, like builds a movie app fetching an API with JavaScript, you can break down the different tasks on the board, and you can showcase that you have actually skills around writing documentation, about running like small projects, and also why not like having other people from the community participating within your projects, and also why not, because this is also talking about security. If you're pushing code on GitHub, I would recommend to visit the GitHub marketplace where you could actually add tools and create like some sort of pipeline. So you don't need to be like a pro in creating your DevOps CI/CD pipeline, but because you're pushing on the public repo, all of these tools are free for public repos. So just experiment, have a try, and just this is a good thing to showcase for potential recruiters and for the community, just to have this baseline. So you'd implement, I don't know, like tools around code review or security, or your CI pipeline, all of those things. So not only JavaScript, but all of those like good things that you have on the side that make you a well-rounded future engineer. That's it.
Yeah. I love Free Code Camp is a great resource. And I like that you mentioned that it's kind of project based sometimes in a lot of cases too, so that you have something tangible to build. Because one of the common questions that you hear from beginners is, well, what do I build? Like, I don't know what to build. Or they might be thinking, I got to come up with some new idea that's going to be the next, great invention, the great piece of software. It's going to be a startup and I'm going to be a millionaire. They have these grand ideas, and they think that before they even learn the programming language that they have to have that idea first. But the reality is you just need to start practicing and get your hands dirty with using the programming language, in this case, JavaScript, before getting too far ahead of yourself to build that whole thing, So yeah, I like that Free Code Camp has that project base, because then that gives people ideas on what to build instead of having to worry about that part, because that can be yet another hurdle for people to get past. A resource I would say is just YouTube in general, right? Like just searching for that, searching for things to see free tutorials that people have. There's a lot of great content on that platform. And then the other idea that came to mind, because I was thinking Free Code Camp as well, but very close to that is the Mozilla Developer Network, MDN, that like just being able to understand the different functions and APIs that are built into JavaScript that are available to you. I, to this day, even though I have plenty of years under my belt working with JavaScript, I still go back and reference it like very frequently, at least once a month, maybe, I would say.
Same. For me, it's like one every hour. As I write a function, I just go there. That's it.
Yeah. Really quick, while we're at a pausing point, let's say hi to some folks that are joining us live in the chat. Thank you for being here. If you are tuning in live right now, watching this either on Twitch or YouTube, I see some of the chat messages, mostly from Twitch right now, from Nightcoder Kajit. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Let me know, and I'm happy to adjust accordingly. Sean08, Frackberg earlier, Gerald. Good to see Gerald in there too. Some funny comments about our discussion earlier I see as well. In that Sean 08 was saying that they heard JavaScript is a subset of Java, right? The go-to joke, right? But
there we go.
Yeah, got it. And Kajit is a first-time chatter too in the stream, so welcome in. We're happy to have you here, Kajit. Cool. Something else that we kind of skipped over a little bit is we were mentioned that this Sonia is a Snyk Ambassador. We were going to have, unfortunately, Ben, who was another Snyk Ambassador that was going to join us, unfortunately had to drop last minute due to unforeseen circumstances. So
we miss you, Ben.
Yeah, we miss you, Ben, and hope everything goes well. But both Sonia and Ben are Snyk Ambassadors. So let's talk about that program really quick and what that's all about, and let people know about that possibility. So Sonia, how would you just what is it being a Snyk Ambassador? How would you describe it to folks?
I would say being a Snyk Ambassador is, first of all, being passionate by security and the open source community, and want to share the knowledge and make more awareness to the entire community. So it's around sharing what you're learning to others, and being passionate with security. Yeah. So it would depend if you like blogging, if you like doing videos or podcasts. There's like a lot of formats to drive that awareness to the community. But yeah, I'd say if you're passionate with security and you would like to share what you know, why not join? And you get also cool swag, which I'm not wearing today. I should, but yeah.
You know, none of us are wearing it actually. Laurent and I aren't either.
No, I only got the memo that I need to wear a hat, so that's the only thing.
Actually, I take that back. My hat is a Snyk hat. It's just backwards. There we go.
That's it. That's it. There we go. You're the officer.
Is this the proper way to wear a hat, by the way?
You can do that and just like, sir, please pull over. You've written evil in your source code.
Yes. Well, that's awesome to hear. And Gerald in the chat shared a link for folks to learn more about the Snyk Ambassador program. The other thing I wanted to mention that if I can get that message up real quick about the Snyk Ambassador program is that we have a new cohort that we're allowing people to sign up for. So if you are interested in becoming a Snyk Ambassador as well, to join Sonia and the rest of us here, you're welcome to do so and apply. Details on that are where, Gerald?
Yeah, that's on the link.
I got it. It's at the link? Oh yeah, I guess you can go look at the link there, snyk.io/Snyk Ambassadors. So there you go. Learn more about that. Join us. Be part of these streams as well. We'd love to have you on, and be in the Discord to join us too to talk more about security. Cool stuff. All right. What's next, Laurent? What do you want to talk about next?
I was gonna say I've got like why are you laughing?
I don't know.
I feel like another troll.
I just like laughing. That's all.
If
you just smile randomly, it'll make everybody else smile and be that much happier. And I tend to do that.
I like that. Putting out the smiles into the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was wanting to just give another link for a way to like get started with JavaScript, also with other texts. But I've recently visited this Microsoft Learn place. It's a nice kind of like way where they gamify it with like some points, and it's connected to like GitHub Labs and stuff. Like you get like both of the both worlds. So it's a pretty cool thing, and apparently they have like a specific JavaScript path, even Node.js and some stuff. So that's pretty cool. Try it out. I think that's gonna be a nice way of like transitioning you into these concepts too.
Nice, yeah, that's great. I see a comment in chat about the Snyk Ambassador program from Nightcoder. Do you have to be good? Have to be good at security in order to be a Snyk Ambassador?
That's a good question. What do you think, Sanya?
I would say if you're passionate about it, and if you're familiar with security, because I know this in the Snyk Ambassador cohort, not everyone is a security engineer. They're also developers, but they're passionate about security. They might be security champions. They might be attending meetups like the OWASP meetups or security conferences. So as long as you would like to spread that awareness around security, yeah, I would say go for it.
There you go, Nightcoder. I see Gerald also responded in chat as well. Great. Swag Sean says swag-driven development to become a Snyk Ambassador to get swag. Yeah, I like that. That's a new one instead of test-driven development. Love it. Love it. All right. So I think we covered Snyk Ambassador program. We covered some resources to get started with learning JavaScript. Where do we go from here? What would you say is your go-to document? I think we kind of touched upon this when I mentioned the MDN, but like what would be like go-to documentation you might go for to help you with JavaScript as you're learning it?
I'll say that I also go to like the Node.js API a lot of times. It's like really well written, like really, really well. I would even go to the Node website has like a documentation on specific things like streams or the event loop. And like if you're new to this or just need to like there's some like deep dives there, like especially with streams of like like best practices, what to avoid pitfalls. So like this could be like really well stuff to just like get like a reference of like what you should be doing or not doing. So those work for me really well. Sonia, how about you?
Yeah, I would say so. The Mozilla documentation, obviously, but if you're learning a specific library or framework, I'd say the official documentation. So, for example, React or Angular or Vue, they'll give you pretty much a good starting point, examples or dummy projects to get you more familiar with the library of the framework. So that would be a good starting point to start with the official documentation.
Nice. So speaking of front-end frameworks, would you recommend, this is for everybody to maybe potentially answer, when somebody's just starting out learning JavaScript, oftentimes the question comes up, oh, well, there's all these libraries and frameworks around JavaScript to help, especially on the front-end side of things. Would you recommend people to jump in headfirst into those starting out, like to learn a framework, or should they maybe go the route of like let's stick with just the JavaScript, the language, learn the syntax and all the odds and ends of it? What would be your advice for somebody in that situation asking a question like that?
I think it's very, at least for me, I think there's no like one definitive answer because like we all learn in different ways. Like some of us like picking up books, others like watching live streams and other people code and like videos and stuff like that. So that's gonna be I think it's like know yourself. Like what do you like to do? If you enjoy just getting hyped on tech and like just enjoy like building something and like having that rush of like, oh my god, I did that thing, and then you understand like, hey, that's really cool. Now let's go back to the basic. Like how exactly did this work? Maybe pick up one of those like a Eloquent JavaScript or some other like JavaScript edition books where you could actually like drill down, understand kind of the concepts. I think that works. I'm the kind of the person I don't need to like read the whole theory, like a whole book about JavaScript, and then tell myself go to like build an app and like go to the Vue or the Angular or the React docs. So I like to like pick it up and like see how things connect dynamically while I go through it.
Nice. Sonia, do you have more to add?
Yeah, no, to echo what Lauren said, yeah, it'll depend on the person. For me, I started with vanilla JavaScript because I wanted to have the basics first, and then what I've done because I wanted to be marketable, so I've done a little bit of research. So I went on the Google Trends and comparing the different frameworks, so for React, Angular, and Vue, and see which one was the most popular. At that time, I was based in South Korea, so in Asia it was more Vue.js. Because I wanted to move to Europe, React was the hot framework. And also I went through, so basically what I've done is going to the hiring websites and just typing the type of role that you're looking for. So if you put software engineer and then you have the kind of requirements with the company. So I was like skimming through the job spec and looking what could be potentially the framework that companies were looking for, and then starting to just dip more into the framework. So in that case, it was React. Yeah, this could be potentially some tips for those who would like to be more like market ready.
I like that you essentially went full on hacker mode and reverse engineered the whole. What should I learn? Right. Well, let's see what people are looking for. What are they paying really good for? And I'll go study those. Give me this book, that book, this live stream, and I'll do those.
Yeah,
I love that.
I see we have another special guest as well joining us now. Let's bring them on here.
Yay.
Amelia, welcome to the stream.
Hey, Amelia.
Hi.
How's it going?
I'm looking into a weird bug in crossfetch where it, given certain headers that are returned in a response, it will actually parse part of the value of the header as being a new header.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm literally Googling crossfetch right now. That's an NPM package.
Yeah. And for some reason, it only seems to happen in Firefox, and I have no idea why.
Oh, wow.
The life of a developer.
Yeah, this was something that was showing up in our Sentry for one of our applications, and it just looks so strange because the error that you get back is invalid character and header field name.
Ooh, okay. Maybe control characters?
Well, the issue is our server was returning back a www authenticate header with two different values, and those two different values were separated by line feed.
Yeah.
And that trips up the fetch polyfills parser, causing the line feed to be interpreted as the start of a new header.
Yeah,
so
that sounds like it.
Yeah, part of the value becomes a new header, which I guess is kind of, in a way, smuggling of headers. Almost.
Yeah.
Are we talking about finding out request smuggling CVEs now?
I didn't even think about it until just then, but yeah, I guess that could happen.
Okay, I see a CVE coming up for you.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly enough, the whole polyfill shouldn't even be being loaded in Firefox because fetch exists, but there seems to be a commit that made fetch always get overridden.
I wonder if that's like a build thing, though.
No, well, kind of. There was a line that was like checking if fetch existed on the global and using that, otherwise using the polyfill. But for some reason, that line was commented out, and it just says disabled service worker support. Like, okay.
Okay.
So, yay.
Very interesting. I like how you joined us and hit us with this tough situation that you're debugging through, and I'm stumped right now. I'm not as familiar with crossfetch like Ron was looking at.
If you're interested, I am working on a reply to a ticket about this error where someone's like, I have no idea what's happening here. And apparently they even updated the whatwig fetch module in order to add more information about what's going wrong when it's parsing the headers. But the root of it, I think, is really just that cross-fetch is incorrectly loading a polyfill when it shouldn't be. I mean,
I'm to an extent a bit concerned in terms of, is it really in fetch or somewhere else? And then if it's in fetch, we have that in node. So is it going to trickle down into a node issue as well?
The problem here is that the www authenticate header, or actually headers in general, there isn't strictly anything saying that there's terminators between headers. So if you've ever looked at how HTTP headers work over the wire, you've got some string, a colon, then some amount of characters, and then generally a raw / new line /r/n type characters, CRLF. So generally when you parse them, you'll split on that CRLF, or raw new line, and then that's how you'll find out the lines of the header, or the individual headers, and then you'll parse by splitting on the colon and using the first part before the colon as being the header key or the header name, and then everything else as being the value of the header. But what's incorrectly happening here is that, well, actually, it's not incorrect strictly speaking, because part of the HTTP spec did say header lines could be separated by just a line feed character, and you can ignore the carriage return character.
I feel like we could definitely go into depth on.
But it's one of those really like sort of like, spec says this is technically right.
Yeah.
Even though it gives broken behavior.
Oh boy, yeah, we could definitely. I guess that could maybe be part of the JavaScript fatigue topic that we were planning on touching upon a little bit, in the sense of, you know, the specs that are out there and which browsers are adhering to what spec and all that stuff. But what I want to get into, because I think it kind of perfectly segues into this, you mentioned that crossfetch was the library that you're talking about. One of the topics we want to discuss as part of the panel is what you all think or find to be your top 3 libraries that you tend to like or use or find the most useful in the projects that you're working on. So who would like to maybe go first at taking a shot at that, of like mentioning some JavaScript libraries that you're fond of?
Is it possible to have a favorite JavaScript library you depend on?
Yeah.
Are you saying, is it? Yeah, I was saying, like, is it too dangerous to be attached to one of them just?
I mean, sure, I work with React a lot, and that's in a lot of my projects, but that's, you know, part of doing a React application. I do generally prefer Lodash over underscore, for instance. So that's one, I guess. But even then, I'm now even taking this sort of stance of just take the individual thing from Lodash that I actually need and use that. Like, just embed it directly in my source code because it's going to be fine. I don't need to pull in a dependency for that. Like, I had a case the other day where I was doing figuring out if a value is an object, because I was grabbing some data from local storage, doing a JSON parse on it, and then I wanted to know, is this thing actually an object, such that I can look for certain keys in it. And in that case, I just took the function from Lodash and I threw that into our code and went, yeah, okay, I don't need to pull in this other dependency. And in the case of Lodash, its isObject function actually even returns true for an array when I actually want it to be false for an array. So I had something like that. But yeah, I don't think there is really a favorite module type thing.
Okay. Sonia, what are your thoughts?
There is stuff that reoccurs, but yeah.
I don't really have like a top 3. Well, I did work a lot with React, so that could be potentially one. And if I move on more to within the ecosystem, I kind of like also Storybook and Gatsby, but I don't know if that could be considered as like libraries more like within the ecosystem. But yeah, that would be something.
And Laurent, any that stand out to you?
Yeah, I usually have my the I don't know if you call them favorites, but indeed it's like the usual suspects that they just bring them in, and I think that's kind of like where it is. Joy people know usually because it's kind of like a JSON schema validation thing, JOI. But I'd say give a try to AJV. It's kind of the same thing, but it's like I like the API there, like the way that you work with it. I like the fact that you're like also a really good crew that kind of like maintains this project. So give AJV a try. I use that when I need to do those kind of things. I build a lot of CLIs. So for those, I kind of like using some people like the to do the minimal stuff. So like if you need to like use an argument parser, which essentially you could just write one in like probably 10 or 20 lines of code if you're not like building a whole thing. Or you could have like some minimal of them, like Cindersource has like I think it's Cindersource like Meow or whatever. There's like Minimis. There's like a bunch of them. But I truly like Yorgs. It's a bit of a bloat. It's a bit of like a lot of stuff. It's coming from like a pirate. No, I'm just kidding. It is like having a pirate logo because it's like Yards. Yeah, but I like it. I like that project.
If you do actually just need like a plain argument parser, as of Node 18, there is actually an argument parser in it, I believe.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
That is lovely to know. I just don't need to do a args array and then pull everything out of that one.
That's good to see and hear. I wasn't aware of that either.
Fairly certain
did you have any more, Laurent? Or was that it?
I was gonna say that my last one is breaking my heart. It's really kind of like I can't believe it is happening, and it's just because I love Jest. Like I believe what it did is like it came at the point where it was like zero config JavaScript, like nothing. You just push it up. It's like a framework for testing. It's like a test runner, test harness, everything, assertion, expectations, and all of that. It's just built in mocking. It's like before Jest, you essentially needed to take a few libraries and connect all of them, right, for stubbing, like Cyan and Mocha for the test runner, etc. And I came to Jest after giving, I think, Ava a try. I don't know if you heard that one.
Yeah,
but everyone has like, you tried that one. So
I haven't tried it. I've just heard of it because I'm a fan of. I hope I get the pronunciation correctly, but Cindersource.
Yeah, I just call him Cinder, or I don't know, Cindersource. Yeah, I hope I'm not butchering it too much. Obviously I'm not saying it as you should, I guess. But so Ava is it's a bit of a food gun sometimes because essentially when you run it, I don't know how it is these days, but when it started, so Cinder was like I'm gonna build like the fastest testing framework there is, and so when you write test code, essentially like the usual suspects are like there's a describe block and then there's like each specific test. And so what's very common to people is tests run in parallel. They can run asynchronously, but they run sequentially, not in parallel. That you like one test case runs, it finishes, the next one runs, it finishes the next one. And if you think about it, that is also potentially a problem of like writing bad tests, and you never know about it because, like, for example, one test case like did something with the database and it didn't clean after itself, and you write another test case and it works, but it only works because there was some residue from like the prior test before it. So when you write things like that, like most frameworks really just work like that, test case, like sequential test cases. And like that's how you would write it. So Ava was like the other way of like running all tests in parallel. And when you write it, you have to like really understand how you write your testing code and like write it in a really good way. So like nothing really conflicts since like they all touch the different the same areas and so on. Like think about the globals, like global state mutations that you usually have in tests. Sometimes you cannot have this in Ava. So it was a nice kind of like going to Ava, but Jest was like really kind of like falling in love in the way it was working. I even like gave a talk about this in like 5 or 6 years back in terms of like the internals of how it works and all about the engines. But yeah, it's a bit of a broken heart story because it also does a lot of like the dark magic behind the scenes of like just changing things could screw things up. And there's some chatter on is it still maintained, not maintained. So I'm not going to go into that one, but like I think we'll see. We should say it has moved officially to be under the OpenJS Foundation as a project. So I mean, just might have a really good bright future ahead of it.
Cool. I see Night Coder in the chat agrees with that approach in the why would you have to clean fixtures after kind of thing. This leads me to my next question for you all. It sounds like I know the answer with Laurent is, do you always make sure to write tests for your projects in JavaScript?
Oh, we're really asking this.
Be honest here.
It depends, and it depends mainly on what stage you are in that project.
Okay.
So
you have to be controversial, Emilia. I see that. Go for it.
Well, like a lot of people will go, oh yeah, you should do test-driven development. Write your tests first, and then write your code to work and match the tests.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
That, or have existing tests and write code, or modify the test to fix the code, whatever. However, what I would generally recommend a lot of teams building applications, not libraries, but building applications to do would be to focus more on sort of integration or end-to-end tests rather than individual unit tests. Sure, unit tests say your hooks or some complex logic. That makes sense. But unit testing your user interface doesn't really make that much sense. You're probably better off using a test runner like Playwright or Selenium, Playwright, Cypress, one of those sort of tools to actually test what the user interacts with and how it works in a browser, rather than trying to test that in isolation.
That's great advice. Yeah. Sonia, you have anything to add?
No, I would echo what actually Emilia just said. It's a good point.
Amelia, you sound like maybe you had a little bit more to add actually after that.
Yeah, so like the reason for coming at it from this like end-to-end testing perspective is that it's typically easier to upgrade your end-to-end tests, and you'll typically get better coverage overall by testing what the user is interacting with, rather than testing, oh, did I get this snapshot of JSX or whatever it is, or thing.
How do you balance it? I'm like, says I've got another friend who like we troll each other about like end-to-end versus unit tests. So like, what do you think is the right balance? Like literally just running components and integration tests, or is it something else?
Like I said, it really goes back to what stage of development you're in and what you're wanting your tests to actually answer. Like I've worked on a lot of applications where we didn't write any tests at all for the first 3 months because it just didn't make sense. The code was moving too quickly. We'd just be spending majority of the time hitting into each other's test failures.
Oh, I see, because it was mostly prototyping, I guess.
Yeah, and then it made sense to later come back and go, okay, let's write end-to-end test coverage on this that actually tests what the user is going to interact with, and we can set up the environment in a given way. And then that gives us some confidence as to what we're shipping. And also that the user interface works as we expect it to work. If you're writing a library, then I would generally go with, try to get towards 100% test coverage, but also be aware that 100% code coverage is a lie.
I was wondering if you were going to go there.
Especially if I'm just asserting true in all of them just to get that coverage up, right? I've seen that before.
Brian, you're nothing.
Not me, but I've seen. Well, yeah, me. Okay, like as a joke, but I've seen that before where I forget this, but it was like just a developer, maybe a contractor or whatever, that was just like trying to under the pressure of the timeline or whatever, they were like, hey, we need you to get test coverage up. You got to write tests, and they were like, okay, sure, and they went and did assert true, like legitimately, that's all they did. And we were like, no, that's not going to cut it. Like,
I mean, there is that sort of thing, but also, like for instance, I've been working on a library recently. Actually, that's all I work on. But we've got cases where if we introduce a bug in one of our modules, then it actually causes all of the other tests to suddenly drop in code coverage, where it drops by like 50%. And we're like, wait, what? And it turns out that it's actually dropping because Jest was bailing on the first error that it encountered. It wasn't that the code coverage had disappeared, it's that the code coverage was still there, it was just bailing on the first error that it encountered. So your stats
also, I think, yeah, no, I was gonna like, I think, just revalidate your kind of like thoughts. I think like just code coverage is one metric, but it's sometimes a vanity metric like some others, or like 100% doesn't mean you've like tested it well, or you know that the tests are really good. So it's a good metric. You should like aspire to that one, but yeah, it doesn't. You need more of that.
All that code coverage really tells you is that 100% of the lines of code have been executed at least once.
Exactly.
But it doesn't tell you whether 100% of the lines of code are correct. It just says they've run.
Exactly. Yeah.
Would you say, so I see a comment from Creekburn in the chat saying 100% branch coverage is the goal. What are your thoughts on that, everybody?
For the libraries that I write at the moment, 100% on everything is what we aim for. Even for applications, we're trying to aim towards like 100%. But like I said, you might have stuff that is causing a branch to evaluate as being true and pass, for instance, a mock or something, or certain input data just evaluates the line and it seems to pass. But if you swap in other data, then you'll actually get it to fail. And your test will be saying you've got 100% code coverage, but you don't actually have 100% test coverage. So it can give a bit of a false sense of security.
Yeah, getting tests right is definitely not an easy thing. So we used to have like a testing strategy, but go Brian.
Yeah, and I was just gonna add, it's not maybe it's obvious, but to make sure it's clear too to everybody, it's not just a JavaScript thing, right? It's like any programming language kind of challenge that you
for sure,
right? So this also leads me into my next question, because we're kind of touching upon this, is tooling. What do you feel has been like your go-to tooling to help you with your JavaScript development? Sonia, why don't you go first this time?
It depends on which level, because there's quite a lot.
I think it changes a lot, right, Sonia? Because like it depends what you build.
We're taking the last 10 years, like just the evolution of the JavaScript libraries is just insane. Like if we go back from like Ember and jQuery from until now, like with the big three, React, Angular, and Vue, it's quite a lot of changes. Yeah, we've also seen it with the package manager, like between Yarn and NPM.
I like you're going there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah, we can also talk about like task runners, like gulp, grunt.
Let's talk about those actually, because I feel like I see them still popping up, but I was under the impression that I thought like, you know, gulp and grunt were kind of, I don't know, maybe being deprecated or on you know, being sunsetted or something like that. What's been your experience, Sonia, with those?
Well, I guess it depends if you still have like some sort of legacy code in your company and this is well implemented. If you still have the team using those and they're still familiar with them, they'll keep using it. Because there's still like a learning curve to move to another task runner. And again, there's like a little bit of training, and it goes back to the JavaScript fatigue. And there's also a cost involved for the company, obviously, because it will probably slow down the production and shipping to prods. And we don't know if the developers have this 20% buffer in their sprint to do that refactoring piece or that training piece. So yeah, it all depends.
Any other thoughts from the rest of the crew here?
As far as the NPM versus Yarn, etc., or?
Sure, we can go into that as well, yeah. What do you I feel like there's more of those popping up too, right? Like more recently, I've seen PNPM.
At the end of the day,
yeah.
they are just all package managers. They all do roughly the same thing. At one workplace, we defaulted to Yarn. At another workplace, we default to NPM. There's really not that much difference between them. Maybe a little bit in like you do Yarn dev instead of NPM run dev. Saves you a couple of characters, but like if you're choosing your package manager based on that, I don't know, maybe just write a shortcut for your CLI, you know, an alias. They're mostly the same, is what I'd say. Now NPM even has workspaces support. That used to be a winning Yarn feature. NPM now has that. So I'm not sure if arguing as to which is better is really a thing worth like going into ever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if it's. I think for like the most of the use cases, like Billy, I think you're like spot on. Like it's just probably going to be no noticeable significant changes for end users. But I think when people try to like, they have like there's like the whole period dependencies compliance kind of between, I said compliance or compatibility between some of like how they work. I think Zoltan was like just tweeting something about this. Is like the PNPM maintainer the other day. But also like thing when you go like more like workspaces, like monorepos and stuff like that. That's kind of like where people usually evaluate like the different things. There's like, Brian, to your like original question, there's like, it's not even just like the package managers, because when you go like full on like more features that you kind of need, like managing a monorepo, and like there's like some really good decisions that you have to make. Like, well, when I'm imagine a monorepo, whether of libraries or applications, and how do you like make a change to one library and make sure that you know how to run tests only for that library? Or how do you know that when you need to run the test for the other libraries that it's dependent on, you only run those versus the whole of the libraries or the application? So like this is like coming down to like CI runtime as well. And there's like a bunch of this. Like now imagine you need to like publish that library because it made a change. Which other libraries that dependent on it do you need to like publish as well? There's like an entire life cycle of managing stuff in monorepos that's like very, very, very different from like just managing a single repository, library or app. So when you go down those kind of like rabbit holes, I think like venturing into maybe kind of like I think it's called NX or NX. There's Turborepo. There's like a bunch of like tools that kind of like help you manage them. And this is where like you kind of like should probably spend more time figuring out which works best with your workflows.
Yep.
Yeah, NX is great. It's sort of superseding Learner. Learner has actually taken the maintainership of Learner has actually been taken over by the NX team, which is fantastic to see. As far as like what build tools you use and what you're using in CI and stuff, I would probably be inclined to argue that majority of developers don't need monorepo tooling, but we're getting monorepo tooling because it feels like it's the easy way, which is we don't have good setups for deploying packages frequently and making sure that we can integrate with our own code frequently enough. So we end up using monorepo tooling to kind of subvert publishing packages.
Yeah, I kind of like feel you. I relate to this a lot because I remember a few years back, like maybe 5 or so, we're looking at this and the monorepo tooling wasn't where it used to be. Like the default back then, I think, was just use Rona and Yarn and like make them work. But it's always like more than that. So yeah, it's I think I hear at least from like people that monorepo tooling has like advanced. But I relate to that. Like tooling is such an essential thing to make sure that you are able to really not get slowed down and into that like path of like always fixing tech rather than like it's helping you.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of, I think, starter templates for instance, design component libraries. which really push developers to, hey, every component should be a separate package. And I'm like, yeah, that's great if you're building a component library that is for the general public to use.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. But if you're building something internally for your own applications at your company, then that probably doesn't really make a whole lot of sense unless you've got thousands of components or hundreds or whatever of components, and most applications only need like 3 of them. Then, yeah, that would make sense, doing that split and having every package be a separate component. Every component be a separate package. But if you're not running into some sort of situation like that, then you can probably get away with just publishing one package. But a lot of the tooling out of the box says, oh yeah, do this thing that's designed for an environment that's not like yours.
Yeah, they have like a different workflow.
So you're essentially getting an extremely complicated workflow because someone else went, yeah, that's the right thing for everybody to do.
Yeah.
Rather than just keeping it simple.
Yeah, that's always the problem with tech, right? Like wanting to be at the bleeding edge and use those shiny new tools, and then like I could just use jQuery here.
Yeah, jQuery's still going strong. You know, like it's still out there quite a bit and used quite a lot.
We should have like a jQuery t-shirt next time, Brian.
Yes,
I feel that.
Let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. But really quick, because I want to kind of maybe summarize our thoughts on this, because we jumped around a little bit between topics, but some takeaways from like choosing tooling, right? When we were talking about NPM, Yarn, whether it's your package management tools or your testing tools. What I think I'm hearing from you all as an answer, as a takeaway for everybody that's watching this, maybe that is learning from this, is essentially, especially when you're working on a team, it's like just pick something and stick with it kind of thing, unless you see a strict advantage of using one thing over another for the purposes of the project. Is that a good summarization of what I'm hearing from you all?
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think there are some cases where you might want to pick a certain thing. For instance, if you're writing a Node package and you're running the unit tests with Jest, you might get some weirdness, especially if you're running those unit tests with JS DOM instead of the Node environment. You're going to see some weird stuff in there. But that's more because the environment is different. I had a developer recently ask me for help where they were using JS DOM in their tests and going, hey, I've got blob in my tests and that works fine. But now when I try and use it in my Node code, it's failing. Like, what's going on? And I had to explain, well, you're including JS DOM here. Node is not JS DOM. It doesn't have any of the DOM APIs in it by default. That's where you're going wrong. So yeah, there are cases where subtle differences will exist, and you might be better picking one way than the other. I know Ava, for instance, tries to not have that problem that Just has. But everything is kind of about the same, and consistency is probably key versus any other metric there. Like, use what you're comfortable with, because you're going to write your best code with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think that this also can be applied to like style approaches, right? Whatever your style guide you all agree upon as a team, of like indentation, white spaces, what have you in that regard, single quotes, double quotes for strings and so forth. So that there you go, folks. In terms of a takeaway, is just decide on something and stick with it and be consistent. As I like how you put that, Amelia, as well.
That, and when new people join, stick with it. Like,
yeah,
if a new person joins your team and goes, oh, I don't like this, well, that's how it is.
Yeah.
Make a really, really, really good argument for changing it, or just use it.
Right.
And
it's got to be really, really good. Like I'm like really emphasize the really there.
At the end of the day,
changing it midway, right? I mean, that's going to throw a huge wrinkle in everybody's flow if everybody's already been accustomed to a certain approach to doing working on the project. So to change it in midway, it can be quite costly on a lot of different levels, right?
Yeah, and the only benefit that you're really going to get there is someone's preferred style is now the de facto style. That's generally the only difference that you're going to get. Someone on the team is going to be more happy than the rest of the team.
Can't make everybody happy, right? So
I mean,
it is what it is.
There could be certain decisions to make where by making a certain choice, it means that you don't have a type of bug that you might otherwise encounter. For instance, you might choose to use undicky versus crossfetch or node fetch. In which case, the reason why you're choosing that really depends on what those libraries can do. As far as style things go, I don't think there is really anything that strictly jumps out. Just make sure you use good linting rules and you run prettier and everything else in order to ensure that your code is consistent. The worst thing to have in a code base is inconsistent code, I think, because it just makes it harder for you to reason about.
Yeah.
Make a style, stick to it.
Not so maintainable.
Make it maintainable. Anyway, I have to jump off, so I wish you all a good evening.
Well, it was a pleasure having you, and thank you for your input and insights on everything, Amelia.
Until another time.
Yes. All right, I'm gonna pop Amelia off there. Did we have any other things that we wanted to touch upon in terms of, this fireside chat on JavaScript, Sonia or Laurent? Anything pressing on your minds?
Sorry, just to come back on the last point. I think developers need to differentiate between interest and usage, because usage is what you're using in your organization, and interest is like, obviously you'll see a new framework and you want to try. So if you really want to try that framework, what I would recommend is potentially use that energy within the open source community and participate to the framework directly. So yeah, if you get, you can get the opportunity or work on any open source project that is using that framework or library. Because you will actually share your interest with folks that are actually using that framework.
Yeah, excellent. Laurent, did you have anything to add?
I'm gonna +1 that from Sonia. I totally agree.
Awesome. So I think we touched upon a lot of the topic areas that we were planning on touching upon. Is there anything else that we wanted to? Oh, I see a comment in chat from Nightcoder. Has anyone ever learned all of JavaScript, or does that take multiple lifetimes?
Yes.
Laurent, what do you think? Did you learn all of JavaScript yet? Or
here's the thing.
Just the good parts.
That's a nice reference. Yeah, I like that. I didn't see that coming though. But I'll tell you a secret. There's probably this is probably not a JavaScript thing, even though people laugh about it. I'm pretty sure there's like the ton of programmers doing Perl or C++, especially, by the way, C++ is such a feature-rich language. Don't know everything there. It's like no one really knows everything about languages, not to talk about the fact that they like advance and evolve. But even at that point, like so it's not a JavaScript thing. No one knows anything else. Don't worry. We're all just like copy pasting from Stack Overflow and other places. Sometimes we copy paste vulnerabilities, which is fun, maybe. Not for Sonia, because sometimes he probably needs to fix them. And run around developers. Don't do this. But well, that's my take.
Sonia, your thoughts? Do you feel like it's like a thing to try and attain as a JavaScript developer, is to learn all of JavaScript, or what do you feel?
I would say just learn the JavaScript that allows you to do your day job. There's probably other things to do in life than learning all the JavaScript. I couldn't be fun. Don't get me wrong, but it'll take a lot of time, and that's time consuming.
Depends how nerdy you are. That's what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right, so I have another question for you both. What do you think the future holds for JavaScript? Where do you see JavaScript in, I don't know, let's say 5 years from now, and then 15 years from now, really far out? So like near term, where do you see JavaScript going, and then long term?
Do you want to take that, or do you want to think it through?
Probably still see React and Angular because they're backed up by big companies like Google and Facebook, so they'll still be there. I don't know which version they will be in like 5-10 years. We might see other frameworks, obviously, because that's the part of the JavaScript ecosystem. Yeah, probably some framework based from inspired by other programming language. Like, for example, we've seen Adonis.js that's inspired by Laravel, so we'd see like probably frameworks inspired by other programming languages. But it would be pretty much the same, I'd say.
And Laurent?
I think we're going to see JavaScript a lot more in the next decade or so. I'm afraid to, like, I'm concerned these days because I know there's like JavaScript and like hard, what do you call the hard stuff that kind of like monitors it. I know there's like some of those run by JavaScript, and I'm like, okay, well, did you do 100% code coverage as we just talked about before you wrote that
yeah, right,
line of code for the hard pacer, the hard pacer thing? So I'm like excited for like more JavaScript all around. I think we're seeing it in the past few years, coming more from like the server side, like Mongo and some other databases have like JavaScript inside where you could like run JavaScript queries right on the document. And then like we saw like TensorFlow, which gives you like AI, well, not AI, just like general machine learning work that you could just write with JavaScript. And there's like more of that. Like Pulumi is a company that you could write like your infrastructure as code with, again, JavaScript. With other languages, I have as the case, but I think to the joke of like whatever can be written with JavaScript will be written. I think to an extent that's kind of true because we're saying JavaScript being like so accessible, so easy to pick up, sometimes so easy to like make mistakes as well. But when you have like such an ambiguous kind of like language, I think it's really like going against the flow to see it dying. It's actually like getting more and more attention, and the more that we bring up cool and pioneering tech, I think we're going to see JavaScript as one of those ways to just attract developers. People are going to build that tech with the JavaScript mindset to help them basically expose it and make it accessible to millions of developers. So yeah, JavaScript is not going anywhere. If anything, it's only going to evolve and potentially not explode anywhere unwearable devices or whatever.
Liran, are you saying that we're going to have more NPM packages and more supply chain attacks? That's not reassuring for us.
So,
well, that keeps us in business, though, right?
Yeah. I mean, it keeps us curious on like really new things that we're seeing and finding out all the time. So it's definitely like that's what keeps me going, every morning. But yeah, like the security part of it is gonna be Sonia is like touching on a really good point.
Yep, I see Robert Tables in chat was mentioning that they don't see the language changing before package management ecosystem changes. In that regard, like having more validated or private registries that people can subscribe to, maybe and away from general open source potentially, is what they see happening. Thank you for that input, Robert Tables. The other thing I wanted to mention, because I think it was based off of what Sonia was saying in terms of inspiration from other programming languages, inspiration from other libraries. I tend to, we joke around, right, about comparing programming languages, and like, Laurent and I have this joke because of Brian Vermeer, who's our colleague of ours, is Java, and we troll each other back and forth. But the reality is, I think today, and as time goes on, is that it's like there, as much as you want to trash on a certain programming language, it's good that programming language is the way it is, because it's been a way for us to learn from and improve and iterate on for future programming languages, right? And so that's why, like, yes, I will joke, but then when I give people serious answers on like thoughts of programming languages, I'm like, I'm thankful for those programming languages. I'm thankful for those to point out some of the, pitfalls of that design in terms of the approach of a programming language, because then that led to other people learning from that. It's that saying of we're standing on the shoulders of giants, right? And like each programming language, as time goes on, that comes out is standing on the shoulders of the giants of the previous or the older programming languages, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to jump on that with a practical example. Like when Dino came out, like a lot of people were like thinking, hey, that's like the next Node.js killer. And like people were, I think, expecting the Node.js, like, community, like, more of the core collaborators and like project members to be like, hey, that's a bad thing. And, don't do this and like just use us. And I think they were like surprised and saying, you know what, like, amazing. Like we wish you like a ton of success. Like, please build something. It's actually a great way to like take all the stuff that we've learned with Node.js and experiment with it and try to run it at like a place where, doing a considerable change to like a, JavaScript, like if you want to change an array method or whatever, like left pattern or something, you're going to break the ecosystem. If you want to change something in Node, it's the same thing because it's like so prevalent. If you're building something new and you're experimenting, that's actually a really good way of like taking all of like, best minds and having them trying to run something. So also a good example to specific on that one is there's been kind of like a back and forth, but some discussions that lately I think Florian and Thomas, like some people on the Node.js security working group, has taken into reopening the issue of like the permission models that Dino has and versus Node not having, and we're like experimenting with that and what kind of so we're like looking what are the successes, what are still the pitfalls, what didn't work for them, what can work for us. So this is actually like, to your point, Brian, exactly kind of like what we need. We kind of need to learn more from each other. And like, I think that's kind of like what the smart people are doing. They're like not really re-trolling stuff for fun, but like people are really understanding that this is like a good evolution of tech, and we all have something to benefit from it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a thought, but I just blanked on it now. Shoot.
Too much Dino for you.
My mind. Yeah. Well, my thought was going to be like, it's kind of like, it's good to have some friendly, I'm prefacing it with this, friendly competition, because it helps drive that innovation, right? And creates the change. Because if there isn't competition, then what tends to happen is, people get stagnant or content, and it doesn't really drive. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, it still could happen, right? I'm not saying overall.
What are you saying right now? We should be friends with Java programmers? Is that like what you're trying to say? What's going on?
You read right through me, Laurent.
Like,
yeah, we need to be friends with Java developers.
Is that a thing now?
It is, sir. All right. Do you all have a few more minutes, or should we start wrapping up? What are you feeling? You ready to go, or you want to keep the conversation rolling? Because I could go either way. I can talk all day on a live stream, Laurent and Sonia.
I think you can bring your Java friends, Brian.
Well, I'm saying I need more Java friends is what I'm getting at. Is what I'm learning, or is my takeaway from this.
Gotcha.
We don't have to, Robert Tables in chat, we don't have to be friends with people that like kale.
What's kale?
It's like a vegetable or something. I don't even
know.
Okay.
It's the food thing.
Yeah, you see, this is that JavaScript fatigue, Sonia, is Laurent thought that was the name of like a library.
Yeah, I was
yeah.
Kale.
I was thinking maybe it was a Java thing. Yeah, I was like Googling this for a second. I'm happy it's like a safe for work thing.
It might be just add .js at the end when you're done.
Yes.
Oh, damn it. I'm gonna do it now. Let's see if we have it.
Somebody's gonna go make that.
Oh, for sure.
I see Kajit's mentioned in chat.
Sonia is right on point. Yes,
really?
Yes. It has
what does it
like
do?
7 weekly downloads. It's a Node.js framework for developers who deliver on time. I love that take.
My new,
pretty cool.
I think we can all, it's safe to say it's all our new favorite library, going back to that question.
Yes, it's a good one.
All right, I think that's a good note to end on, actually. So we're going to start closing out here. I want to thank you both again. Thank everybody.
Did we lose Brian? What's going on?
Oh, I got disconnected there for a second. Thank you, Internet, for holding up until just that moment right there. And
ALJS got you.
Kale.js got me. It showed up right on time. I want to remind everybody that you can join the Snyk or apply to join the Snyk Ambassador. We're having a new cohort joining up there. The link to that is in the. I had the link. Where was it? Oh, it was a chat message. That's why I thought I had it set up as a banner. Oh, goodness me. Gerald, are you on that? I can drop that link again. Snyk.io/Snyk-Ambassadors, I believe it was. There it is. Thank you, Gerald. And I was right. Look at that. So head on over there, apply to become a Snyk Ambassador, and we're looking forward to hearing from you. I think this concludes today's live stream, this session. I want to, again, thank everybody for tuning into all of them throughout the week. We have more coming up next week, so be sure, wherever you're watching this right now, if it's on YouTube, like the video and subscribe so that you get notified to the new videos that are coming out, new streams that we got going on next week. And on Twitch, make sure to follow as well. And feel free to turn the notifications on or off. I don't like having notifications on. What about you all? Sonia, Laurent? Notifications stink.
I have it on.
You have it on? Wow.
Yes.
I do have
Otherwise,
it on.
I don't remember. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, when you work in security, you have them on. You never know.
What a great answer, Sonia. Love it. Love it. All right, folks. On that note, have a good rest of the day wherever you are in the world. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.